Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Dratnos. Joining us once again live for the first time in a couple months is Trell.
Hey, guys.
And also here is Tettles down there.
Yes. What's up?
Not much. Just happy to be here, back live on Twitch, my favorite platform. Although, of course, for those of you listening later, we are still on all the places where we have always been: Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. The only thing you'll notice is that the days have changed a little bit now that we're back to our live schedule, because the MDI is now over for all intents and purposes until BlizzCon. At which point Tettles will be once again casting at BlizzCon, so that'll be fun to watch. But this week, since we're back live, we're going to try and do a nice longer Q&A segment with questions from chat and stuff. But of course, if you can't make it live, we always take questions on Twitter and through Discord too, so send us those there. We also have a bunch of different topics this week. We're going to try and do like 10 minutes per topic or so and do like 5 topics, something like that. Our topics are teaming, 4 DPS dungeons, creating routes. That's kind of our biggest topic for this week is creating routes. That's the one that I could see going a little longer. And then we're going to talk about East Cup and Shadow of Azul, which are kind of 2 different topics, but also kind of the same topic because East Cup, they wiped Shadow of Azul a bunch of times. And that is kind of how we wanted to talk about East Cup because it's, relevant.
Yeah, that was something.
Mm-hmm. But I think Shadow Azul is something that wipes everybody on live all the time as well. So we figured it would be a good topic to have to talk about how to actually do that fight properly. Before we start, though, let's quickly shout out our supporters over at patreon.com/Titanforge, who are helping us do this show. Big thank you to those people, and especially Paul Gu Tettles Jr., aka Never Nude, and Ahar of US Proudmore. Thank you for your support, helping us do this show.
Can you say it like a pirate for me again?
Ahar? I think that
Ahar.
They clarified that it was more just like that. That's the vowel sound was supposed to be like in yar or r or whatever, and it wasn't actually supposed to be pronounced like a pirate. But you do what you got to do, right? If somebody says like a pirate, that's the direction I take it in. So I don't think that was my fault. I think that was a perfectly understandable mistake to make. Okay, let's move on to our first topic.
Moving on.
Let's get me out of here. Hearthstone. All right, so teaming is our first topic. Teaming is an affix that is active in the current week that we are recording this show, and it's pretty brutal again. Kind of every time teaming week rolls around, you sort of forget. You're honestly when you're looking at when you look at the affix schedule, you're kind of like, oh, teaming, that's nice. At least it's not an affix that actually changes how the fights work or anything, right? You kind of are looking at the schedule and you're like, okay, it's going to be a breath of fresh air. And then teaming week actually happens, and you just like you look at some of these polls and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And it's actually awful every time. So, Tettles, I understand that you're a bit of our Legion historian here as well. I guess Tettles and Troll, you both are, but what's different between Legion or teaming in Legion and BFA?
Well, I think in general, just in Legion, all of the mobs that would end up getting added through teaming, most of the time they would be just like random trash mobs, or just like you would get some like Eye of Ashara crabs, or you just get like random stuff that is easy to kill. Whereas in BFA, it feels like every teaming mob is a lieutenant mob for some reason, and there's like a Waycrest Manderpool with like 2 witches and like the soul captain in the guard, and you're just like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, that Waycrest Manderpool, it's like Soul Charmer, Runeweaver, Guard, Captain, and it's in the middle of 2 patrols of Captain Guard as well, so it's pretty hard to pull it without those. And on the other teaming week that's not active this week, there's also a Void there on the other teaming week on the calendar, which is just, I mean, at least you can pull them back. You can pull it away from the Void, but it's not pleasant. Yeah, I think you're onto something though, Tettles, is that like Okay, so obviously teaming, the idea is there are more enemies throughout the dungeon, and you need to kill dramatically more enemies to reach enemy forces as well. But it felt like in Legion you could generally just do the same pulls, and they scaled up by the right amount to still reach enemy forces count for the most part. In BFA, that's a lot less true, right? In BFA, you also have to you not only have to do the same pulls you normally would do, which are bigger and tougher, but you also have to add some extra pulls to most dungeons. Like Shrine of the Storm is a good example of this, where most groups have like some plan for what they want to pull in Shrine of the Storm and what they want to skip. And usually on teaming weeks, you have to go back and like pull some packs that you usually skip and figure out where you're going to get your extra count from. And like most of the count, the first 600 counters or whatever, which is how much you need in Shrine on a normal week, is pretty easy. Like it's not that bad. But the next couple hundred that's available on the map is actually pretty rough. Like the things that we choose not to pull are pretty bad in terms of either efficiency or difficulty. So it really, like, forcing us to add some of those pulls really scales up the time of the dungeon, right?
Well,
I'd say like 2 or 3 minutes on a lot of these dungeons. Some of them are okay, like they were in Legion, where it's kind of the same number of pulls, but Motherload and Shrine, I think, especially have like at least 3 to 4 extra pulls that you kind of have to do.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think Freehold actually has the advantage of this week of being the Blackwater event, where you can actually get your gig account from that, so you're actually in an okay spot count wise in Freehold. But for something like Shrine of the Storm, it's also part of the problem is that the living currents are still just like not pullable, so you have to pull like some mini bosses like either Runecarver Sorn or the Guardian Elemental, or literally every other trash mob in the instance if you don't want to pull those guys, right?
Yeah, I don't mind. Like Runecarver, obviously you're pulling Heldis, right? Like Heldis is just something you have to. That's kind of the least bad of those. And then there's you could pull the like ritualists and stuff, but like Tide Sage Enforcers are in that area. So if you actually are trying to fight and not skip the trash after the second boss, there's just so much of it is gonna murder your tank that I don't really know what the best plan is in Shrine. I think it might just be like pulling a bunch more trash at the very start of the dungeon, like going off at the little side place there where there's some attendants and spiritualists hanging out and just pulling a bunch of those.
There's a Void Emissary.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the enforcers are actually a good choice. They're hard, but
Okay.
you can. I mean, you survive for 10 seconds. You can kite them the rest of the time if you have a few tools at least, like Ring of Peace.
That makes sense.
And then what was the other? You have to pretty much pull everything you can with bosses. Since it's not bolstering or necrotic or anything, you have to just pull stuff into bosses as much as you can to try to make up some time.
Yeah, but I feel like the major issue with teaming in general is that some of these just don't scale that well, and then they add like lieutenant mobs that you have to pull to be able to make up count. A few examples that I wrote down was Siege of Borealis. You have the 2 horses after the second boss, which is like, what the fuck is that?
Well, you could skip those though. You could just walk around them and pull some extra monkeys later.
Like again, like it's so hard to get count.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you want the spotter. From
Right. So if you're bringing the spotter with you, you
boss.
can't easily skip them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can just do
There's
like
probably a way to carefully do it, but
you could do like Commander Demolisher as a pull, and then you can pull a bunch of monkeys and kill it with the spotter.
that, or we skipped the pack right before second boss this week, did the boss, and then opened the gate for the commanders, and then we did the commanders with the pack before the boss.
Cool.
So it was kind of one pull that would normally be done, but just in a different order. You can do a lot of that stuff through these dungeons, but it is a lot harder on teaming.
King's Rest is another good example of like there's just like an extra purification construct in Machimba's room that takes a bunch of time to kill, and then there's like a brute on the bridge, right? Like at the start of the bridge.
A second brute.
Yeah.
Dude, people skip brutes on live as is because that shit takes forever. Like, why in the world?
And it's pretty much impossible to skip both brutes and still make count. Like you can maybe technically do it, but it's not good. There's so much you basically need to kill everything in that dungeon. You can skip like 1 pack or 2 packs.
Yeah, just about.
So yeah, a harsh dungeon on teaming, and a lot of them are kind of harsh like that. Some of them aren't so bad though. I think Freehold is a good example of just a dungeon that like is a good one to run this week. Underrot too. Underrot's kind of always like affix immune, I would say. I like Underrot because it feels like pretty much every week is a good Underrot week, and not like it's not good in terms of like it's an undertuned dungeon. Like it's reasonably tuned, right? It's a hard dungeon. It's just kind of it scales well with all the affixes. But yeah, many of the other dungeons are pretty closed this week, I'd say.
Well, I think I think Underrot's the way it is because of how you have to like slow pull the dungeon because you're kind of limited in Kragmaw's room anyways, and that's where the most time normally ends up getting made up. But you're just chain pulling blood swarmers like as they die. You're not actually going like that big, so your pulls themselves aren't really impacted too much.
Yeah, and there's some flex. Like it's a dungeon where there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can pull. The bosses like scale reasonably hard. They're hard with Tyrannical, but they're not unkillable ever. It's nice.
Stratness.
Yeah.
Okay, so Trell was telling me about this new technique he was thinking about. So after Spore Collar, he was thinking about going left and killing all of the worms.
No.
The worm strategy. Ah, yes. Tell me more, Trell. What?
Oh yes. The play is definitely to kill one mob worth four count at a time in a straight line to the last boss. And there's like 7 worms on that left side.
I see 6 at a cursory look at the MDT on the left side, but I guess you could then get some of the ones in the middle too. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's some defilers and corruptors patrolling over there too.
True. Hey, there used to be that nice skeleton pack on the left there, and then they just took it.
Ah, yeah, I remember that skeleton pack. That was such a good pack as well. That you'd pull that with the other skelly pack. Yeah, and you'd do like 10 skellies all at once. That was a nice one. I'm sad they took away that skeleton pack, and now it's so empty too. It's so empty over there. There's just no enemies where that pack used to be.
Do we know why they removed that other skeleton pack? Like, what was
It's
the
probably
reasoning behind
too
that?
easy.
I remember something about the skip being there, and people to be able to walk through without aggroing, even though you could still walk through without aggroing anyway.
The skip back from the beginning of the instance that shouldn't be there. You
Yeah.
should have a checkpoint at Spore Collar instead. Oh yes, I do know what you're referring to. Okay.
That's one of my favorite things of BFA dungeons is like it's just entirely random where you res. If you didn't know, there's no like consistent philosophy behind where you res after you killed a boss. Like in some dungeons it updates every time you kill a boss, in some dungeons it updates like twice throughout the dungeon and doesn't update at other times. And in some dungeons it just like in a shrine it updates once, right? And the rest of the time you're just spawning at the start of the dungeon and you have to kill a pack to turn on one of the little skip things, but that's just a dungeon where you just are dead if you wipe, right?
I would say for most dungeons, it's probably fine to like. I don't think any of the dungeons where you're spawning at the bosses is innately bad. Especially some like even if it is every other boss for a couple of the dungeons, it's not even the worst. However, the dungeons with checkpoints like Underrot and Shrine of the Storm are absolutely just absurd.
Yeah, the ones where you don't update your graveyard and you just have to like you have to run back through the like middle of the dungeon or whatever and some skip that opened up.
I mean, just imagine if you die on the pack on the bridge before Lord Stormsong, or you die to the eel or the tentacle pack because it has a tides in it or something like that, and then you'd have to run like legitimately all the way back. And God forbid you didn't open up that.
Yeah, you did. Well, you have to kill like a pretty inefficient ritualist to open that checkpoint as well. So many groups will not have that checkpoint open.
Yeah, exactly. And then like God forbid you don't open up that checkpoint, then it's like, all right, guess we're zoning out, run it back.
Yeah, it's tragic.
Time spent running it back, like
you can't. It's a 5 minute.
Like
yeah, that's too.
As well zone out.
It's just too.
Let alone the
too
skips
much.
you have to do again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Shrine you could realistically have like 5 skips that you need to execute to get back to where you were at the end of the bridge if you wipe there. So yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I kind of wouldn't mind if it was like that in every dungeon. I just wish it was consistent. I would kind of rather all of them be awful than just like some of them randomly be awful and others be nice, because it just feels so stupid that there's like some dungeons where you just like you wipe and you're fine, and some dungeons you wipe and it's over, right?
Well, Jason does pose a really good point in chat. It says it does make it easier to zone out on a wipe, so they're really thinking of us.
True.
Mm-hmm, okay, I see.
Yeah. Yes, I think I agree.
Okay, would you describe that perspective as an optimistic perspective or a pessimistic perspective? It's kind of hard to tell. Is that glass half empty or full?
In the words of Rorzy, I would describe it as a middling perspective, and it's bad.
Okay, cool. So I think that our opinion on teaming is pretty much it sucks, delete it. Replace it with reaping. That's my idea. And a lot of people's idea.
I think that we're all on board with the replacing teaming with reaping, because teaming feels so out of place in BFA. And like whenever you think about teaming in Legion, it was arguably too undertuned as well. So it feels like it's very challenging to reach a balance in terms of like you want it to be hard, but you don't want it to be, hey, bro, let me spawn 2 fucking horses or 3 fucking witches like right here. I'm just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
There's also like oh god, there's like if you get top right and you have to go up the stairs, apparently there's like a double diviner pull or some shit that's up there too.
Up on yeah. That's not
Something
good.
just fucking like ridiculous where you're just like, what the hell is this?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the one. I can't remember.
it's on the up the stairs on the left. That you only have to go up that side if you get the top right door. Because you know if you get top right, the bottom door to Heartsbane Triad isn't open.
You know where all the birds are, Trell?
Oh yeah.
The ravens.
Yeah, that is a hard pull.
Yeah, it's
It's got 2 diviners in it. It's like,
but like reaping, they just have this like insanely good affix that is currently not being used anywhere. It would be so good to just have that. Like it does the same thing that Teeming does, where you like have to fight a lot more enemies, but it's much more fun.
I think that feels like a good balance of what teaming should probably end up being, because it doesn't make it abnormally challenging, and like every single dungeon feels mostly the same on teaming, whereas this, like right now, it's like, oh, what the hell? Some of these dungeons are just absurd, and then you have Freehold where you're just like, all right, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
It would also actually save Blizzard a lot of time next X pack if they just did that instead of teaming, because they wouldn't have to add certain mobs in every pull hand by hand. They would just slap reaping on it and call it good.
Also, teaming is something that they have done a lot of like. They've had to do a lot of balancing changes to teaming mid expansion, right? They nerfed Motherlode teaming, they nerfed King's Rest teaming multiple times. Like they have to keep going back and fixing where teaming is just is like even more brutal than it's supposed to be, which is pretty brutal.
Well, I mean, they also haven't fixed the Ataldazar teaming, whether or not you get the pack on the left or not.
So. I don't even get a start.
Yeah, Ataldazar is some nice and fun RNG gameplay. That's what they should just do for all dungeons. Like, you know, if they just look at BFA M Plus and they're like, okay, the problem here is that people are spending too much time creating routes. They could just replace all of the spawns with RNG spawns, and you wouldn't be sure, and you just kind of have to go in and wing it. That's I think what they're prototyping with the
more RNG.
For those moving on.
For those of you who don't know, Ataldazar has like 3 different spawns that are RNG on teaming. So it's weird. Yeah,
there's the pack on the left. It's the normal 3-pack of like a Juggernaut, Confessor, Augur, which could have an extra Confessor and an extra Juggernaut.
We missed the Void Emissary Dervish talk.
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that. Squishy in chat reminding us about that. Okay, so let me tell you guys this story. It's 4 hours before a reset, and I'm creating the weekly routes for the next week because I'm a horrific procrastinator and just I cannot do work before like the day it's due or whatever. I've been that way my entire life, and I'm just in Temple, like trying to figure out this route in Temple, and I just see this pull, and the pull is 5 dervishes, 1 void, and I'm just looking at him like, so I make this tweet, and I took a screenshot of that pull, and I just I memed in some discords. I posted it in Trell's Discord. I was like, "Good night, gamers. When you wake up, this pack will be here to greet you." And then I put like a little sparkle emoji. And then I tweeted it as well. I tweeted just, "Oh no, and then a screenshot of that pack. I got some mileage out of it. And then I went to bed, and like by the time I woke up, they'd removed that void. Actually, it was pretty nice. They removed it very quickly on reset day. But that was not at all reasonable. Okay, since then I've done Temple without that void. I've done just the 5 dervish pull, and it was not easy. Like that pull alone is like the highest requirement of healing and I guess damage. It's not too damage intensive. Like you probably can, but like you need to have a healer that can keep you up for 30 seconds through like twice as much damage as the rest of the dungeon. So yeah, what a ridiculous pull.
Even without a void, there, it's still really hard. With a void, I think
why
it's
are those
just
mobs teaming? Like, dude. Again,
yeah, or why aren't they teaming? Like, why did it go from 2 to 5? Why didn't it go from 2 to 3? Right?
Yeah.
Or like 4.
Almost twice as many fucking dervishes.
You have to kill 2.5 times as many as normal, right? And that pull. Like if you want to in a normal fortified week, you can kill the most dervishes you have to kill at once is 3. Having that go up to 5 is just ridiculous. Yeah. So, a catastrophic pull. And I
It's a
think
classic
that
example of how unbalanced teaming is. Like that pool is literally 2.5 times its normal size, and other dungeons might be 1.2 times the normal size with one extra mob.
yeah, and the main problem, like that pull is not one you can pull away from the void easily. So when the void was there, it was just not remotely fair.
Mhm.
All right, let's move on to the next topic here. Let's get me out of this teaming nightmare. Hearthstone.
We almost forgot about it. Too.
Yeah, the void. I mean, okay. To their credit, they removed it very very quickly. Which, again, ooh, what happened to my webcam? Oh no.
Oh,
Okay, my webcam sucks. By the way, I'll get a new one soon. Don't worry. But it might do that a couple times today. Okay, yeah. So I was about to get to this, but Squishy in chat is a clairvoyant. We were the cause of the fix being so quick here. Okay, it was our Twitter influence and engagement, I believe, that led to this being fixed so rapidly on Tuesday. Because Blizzard's pretty slow about fixing these sorts of things. Usually, like when I saw that void, I assumed it would get fixed, but I assumed it would get fixed on like Friday or Sunday
or the
something.
week after or something.
Yeah, the week after, something like that. But it turns out that just you and me, our combined Twitter influence trail. I don't know if Tettles was involved in this either. I kind of assume he wasn't. I don't remember him being. Tettles, were you involved in this tweet thing? Because Trell had one that got really popular, I think, on it too.
I just tagged Warcraft devs. That's all I did.
Yeah, so I think that what this means is that instead of the Warcraft devs having like 0 people that they kind of listen to in the community, now they have 3 us. We are the sole standard bearers for the WoW community, the one conduit of communication to the Warcraft devs.
Yeah, that's just scary.
Yeah, so
get me out of this. This does not seem like the move.
So if anybody would like us to pass anything on to the Warcraft devs, just let us know, and we will use our powers for good.
Yeah, you should specifically message Dratanos on Discord. Make sure you flood his DMs. It's Dratanos #0001 on Discord.
I would message Tettles. In fact, what I would do is I would type it in Twitch chat during the MDI, just at Warcraft, and tell them, can you ask Tettles this? And then just put the question you have there, and then just try and copy paste that over and over again until you get a response. Okay.
God damn it.
Let's talk about this phenomenon that we've been seeing crop up a little bit last week and now this week some more, of 4 DPSing dungeons. So this was something that happened in Legion for the first time for real, but that was a little bit more of a meme because Blood Death Knight could realistically just sustain the whole group pretty easily with their leech on that artifact ability thing. Consumption. But now in BFA, we've been seeing some pretty high keys being done with 4 DPS. Zamok last week was doing it on 19s. Then this week, we have this keystone completed here. This is a 21 Underrot with 4 DPS done by Andy Brew here. You can see here we have the damage and healing meters up on screen. And you can see there's no healing spec in this group. And this was a 21 in time. The comp here is Fury Warrior, Havoc Demon Hunter, Double Boomkin, Brewmaster. I don't know what you guys think about the whole 4 DPS strategy. I do think that at least one Moonkin is pretty much a required part of any 4 DPS breakfast. Just because the amount of off healing they're able to put out when you actually do need healing throughout the dungeon is pretty high. And most places, like even Underrot, has Cragmaw tramples where it'd be really nice to have somebody throwing out a couple off heals, right? Tettles, as a Moonkin, do you think that that's a fair assessment, or do you think you could do this without a Moonkin as well?
I mean, I think it's for trees for the tank damage too.
Okay, yeah, trees.
Yeah, I was about to say. The trees period, you can just, if you're a class that has self heals and some kind of alternate sustain, you can just walk away and vivify yourself to full and just reset the health without even using your Gift of the Ox orbs or your Light of the Protector as a paladin. It's just like an instant reset. And having 2 sets of trees is huge. You can like min max that to death. I think every trash bowl is probably doable with 2 boomkins without a healer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that, which is pretty bad because that's definitely the biggest part that they're bringing. And then the other specs that you have here, note that every DPS spec here has a tremendous amount of self-heal in this group, right? Fury Warriors, whenever they use their cooldown in Rage Regeneration, they can just top themselves like 3 times over the course of that cooldown. Havoc Demon Hunters, of course, are just immune to damage for the most part. And then Boom Kids, of course, can go bear form or heal themselves too. So the whole group is very durable against things like Kragmaw's Trample, which would normally be a problem without a healer, right?
So I think another big thing about this is that under rot, I think this doesn't work in like caster heavy dungeons. Like, think about something like Shrine of the Storm. You're not going to be able to do this in Shrine of the Storm. Your tank is going to just absolutely get wrecked. Like,
you need to stop all of the water blasts. If you're doing this in Shrine, you need to be kicking every water blast, right?
Yeah, legitimately every water blast.
2 solar beams.
Yeah, you have 2 solar beams and 2 trees. Like, it's not the most absurd thing to think about those being handled.
I think actually, yeah, I really think Shrine's fine. You can kite the water blasts. You can do a lot. To just 2 sets of trees, 2 sets of beams, 3 melee kicks. Having an extra non-healer is actually massive on those pulls because it's all about kicks. That's all it is.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a.
And your tank can run and start lining as well.
Anywhere that your tank is actually going to get just absolutely clapped down, though, is not really doable for a strategy like this. But it is definitely interesting to see that people are trying this, especially on a 21, because like Under Rot is like I would say it's probably by far the lowest tank damage dungeon. Would you guys agree? It seems like it's.
That or Siege. Siege with trees is like 0 tank damage.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Feral Bloodswarmers being the hard trash though that don't damage tanks is definitely definitely a thing here.
Really good example for sure.
Yeah. And Underrot is nice as well in that Underrot's one of these dungeons where you can play this kind of comp that doesn't have a rogue and still pull reasonable packs only. Like the only you lose a little bit of flexibility. You have to pull the mask pack, but that's not that bad either. Especially with a composition like this. So I think that Underrot is one of the best ones to be doing this in, and that's why it's no surprise that it's like the highest one that was timed with this strategy so far.
Well, do you guys remember whenever people were doing Liaxa with 4 DPS and a tank for a while?
Yeah, I remember that. That was back when it was a strict DPS check. You would just have your healer like go balance for it, and then come back in for resto afterwards. And
That's
then
because the second spawn of ads would be 2 ads, and that was just ridiculous and unlivable. Mm-hmm. So you had to kill it right then or right before.
There was also the 4 or 5 prot warrior. I think it was 4 prot warrior. 4 prot warrior elderly Axa done at plus 30 on the tournament realm. I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but there's a clip of it somewhere. It's on Limit Max's clips. If you look through the like top ones, there's one of him just hit like 4 prot warriors just spell reflecting that thing back when that scaled out of control. But they've nerfed that.
I just remembered one Boomkin in the 4 DPS comp and Underrot can actually just spam hibernate the Bloodswarmer. And that literally. Oh, did you? No,
yeah.
Sorry, but you can spam hibernate right before he finishes the fixate cast, so he never actually fixates anyone. It just stands there.
Yeah, or you can do it on a Sonic Screech cast. Either one, as long as you don't interrupt the Sonic Screech, you can actually, and you can do this without a Boomkin to some extent as well. Like when I play Rogue here, I'll like gouge it right at the end of a Sonic Screech cast, and then stun it right at the end of the next Sonic Screech cast, and then like blind it at the end of one, vanish cheap shot it at the end of one, and you can kind of keep it. It won't do damage as long as it's trying to cast the Sonic Screech. So as long as you don't kick it and you just keep using a pseudo interrupt on it, you can keep it doing that forever. Hibernator, of course, is best though because you can just keep spamming it.
Yeah, and doing that while the mob is in melee is also pretty important because then it can just get cleaved down with everything else.
Yeah.
Okay, so
if you choose to, good.
Do you guys think that 4 DPSing is a legitimate strategy up until a certain point, or do you think it's like one of those things that's cool to see, not fairly practical though?
I think you could actually do World First Keys at like maybe 1 or 2 dungeons with 4 DPS, but I don't think you could do all 10. Certainly not more than half of them. And so that kind of prevents practicing as a group because you'd have to swap your entire comp for like 2 dungeons, and you'd have to like luckily get the key to get a World First Key in the first place. So how do you go about that with 2 different groups and then balancing keys? You could, but it'd be a big pain, and the healer probably wouldn't enjoy that.
Yeah,
you'd have to sit.
You would need like somebody who played healer or balance, and you'd also need somebody who could play like a rogue or one of these specs that sees more play in 4 DPS, right? I guess you could just play rogue in 4 DPS. It's probably not the end of the world, but it seems like the 4 DPS comp usually doesn't have a rogue because these other classes like have a lot more self-healing and stuff going on. I think rogues are pretty durable though. You could probably get away with one in here. Like I think
what
that.
About Sin?
Yeah, assassination.
And with leeching poison.
leeching poison. I mean, I think that you could just do it with like health pots and crimson vial, and
Yeah, I
you
was
know
gonna say.
it's probably enough to get like, because you can cloak you can survive the damage just by not taking too much damage with feint and cloak and stuff. I don't know. It would definitely be harder than these specs that have all this self healing on demand. But I think that when we're talking about like, is this a super viable strategy? One thing that we've seen so far is like, okay, the people who've been doing this are like Zamak, Andy Brew, all the people in these groups. Like, these people are timing 21s at the high end with the 4 DPS strategy, and with the 1 healer 3 DPS strategy, they're doing 23s and 24s, right? So it certainly looks like this is a couple levels below what they could be doing with the like the healer in the comp, right?
Well, you could argue that this is one of the worst weeks for this too because of quaking.
Yeah. I think it's all about like, would they want to spend the time on the best week doing 4 DPS or not? I think they could probably do that in some dungeons, but probably not all of them.
Yeah, I think you're right though that like it's really tough to commit to a 4 DPS comp. Like, it's really hard to play with the same 5 people and have access to a good 4 DPS comp and a good 3 DPS comp easily, but maybe you could. Definitely, yeah. Blood Death Knight being the tank of this comp is kind of an interesting thing to think about as well. Obviously, Blood is like really in a squishy place right now, so that's a worry. Is Blood Death Knight like being able to survive a boss tanking without a lot of healing coming in? But effects like Mass Grip against dungeons when you're trying to do it with 4 DPS, like, that's really strong. If you think about the Shrine of the Storm pull that was making you worried about doing 4 DPS, like, Mass Grip into beam is so good for that pull, right? So
That's true.
I think that if we see blood buffs or a good blood build come around or something like that, this could be a really good strategy for that spec as well. And blood brings a B-res too, which is a useful thing to have when you don't have a healer. Especially if you only have like 1 balance rate or something. I don't know, just something to think about. I think so far it looks like Paladin is the best tank for the 4 DPS thing, but Brewmaster definitely can work too. I think any tank with two balance druids can do it too, probably.
I love all this balanced druid talk. It really makes me happy.
2 balance druids, 1 key.
Honestly, dude, throwback to fucking Legion where Waffle Sauce and I played with fucking Jason.
The good old days, yeah.
That was the good old days, yeah. Fucking glory days.
All right, let's move on to our next topic here, which is creating routes. So this topic, I kind of envision this topic as being designed, like, kind of the question of, like, how do you create routes for your group specifically, as well as just creating routes in general. So obviously I make routes every week for Raider.io. I make a basic and an expert route for every dungeon. They have a lot of colors and stuff and things going on, but those are kind of generic routes. They're just designed to be ones that most groups can make use of. I used to not even have skips in the basic routes, like no skips at all was the rule. This season, that's not really possible. You can't really do dungeons without skips in Beguiling World, just because there's so much. Like, I tried to make routes without skips for every dungeon, and you end up either pulling the exact same packs every week because they're the only pulls that you can pull to get to 100%, and anything extra you added, you couldn't cut anything. Or it was just like awful pulls, like the Volcall, double honor guard void. I'm not gonna put a route with that pull marked in it. It's just not happening. It feels unethical.
So cannot ethically recommend that group.
Yeah.
Do you feel like people are just gonna death skip, or do you think that they're just gonna pull it anyways? Realistically, if people are going to if they're going to read it and they're going to be like looking at it, do you think they're just going to death run, or do you think they're just going to pull it anyways because they don't know?
If people, my thought was like, if people are going to just pull what's in front of them anyways, like, are they really looking for a route then, or are they just going to walk through the dungeon pulling what's in front of them, right?
That's fair. I mean, in pugs in general, that's.
I think you have to skip some stuff. Like, I think honestly, like, the double honor guard double witch doctor void, like, if you have to use a battle res or whatever to skip that, that's worth doing. It's so bad, that pull. So
that's a good point.
Even at the beginner level, I think they should learn that is going to be necessary at any level higher than mid 9 or 10. So having that on the route's good, and if they choose to do it, by all means go for it, but otherwise try to find a way to skip it even without a route.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your route is also adverse to getting over 100% count, right?
Yeah, I try not to go. I used to have some, like, back when I couldn't do skips, my temple and king's rest routes would go to like 120 because that's what happens if you can't do skips in those dungeons.
Yes, I agree.
So that was unfortunate, but now I do aim for 100 to 105 in every dungeon, which is good, right? You want to try and have below 100, like below 110% count, right? You don't want to go over count by more than a couple percent.
I don't think we ever go above like 102%, like any dungeon.
Mm-hmm. So that, I guess let's use let's do a quick term definition here, because you'll hear us on this podcast talk about count a lot, and count and percent. Sometimes you're in these groups and somebody's like, oh, we need 3%, and then somebody's like, okay, we need 8 count, and those are like, if you have people trying to communicate at each other, one of them is using percent and one of them is using count, it often is a big problem. So I'm going to make an argument that everybody should use count, because count is a more precise unit. Count doesn't change between teaming and non-teaming weeks.
Don't roll your eyes, Tettles. He's right.
Yeah, the same mob is worth 4 count on teaming or non-teaming week, but on teaming week, suddenly your percents are just thrown out the window because that mob is now worth 1.7% instead of 2.3%. Talking about it as an MDI caster, I can understand why you're supposed to use percent. That's fine. I don't mind doing that there, but I think that when you're actually doing keys, using an add-on like Angry Keystones or Gotta Go Fast to show you percent or count instead of percent, and talking about it in those terms is going to lead to a lot fewer situations where you get to the end of the dungeon and you're like, oh, we need about 11%, and then you just kind of like pull stuff and you're like, okay, we only got 10%, we got to pull another mob, and you're just fighting one mob by itself, and then you deplete the dungeon by 30 seconds, and it's that has happened to all of us, I'm sure.
Well, okay, so the issue, I guess, like the underlying issue is that Blizzard uses count for the mobs. Like they assign the mobs count values, but it's hidden and they show percent out as part of the base UI. And count was only discovered like in Legion just due to extensive testing of trying to figure out how the mobs actually worked and then assigning count values to them. So it was like a whole big thing because we thought the mobs gave like percent, and then on teaming they just gave less percent. But then it was eventually figured out that they give like static count, and it's just less.
I hope they'll just show count on their base UI eventually, because I think even in patch notes they include count numbers now, right?
Yeah, they include count numbers for like win speaker and all the other stuff.
Yeah, when they increased those to 36. One fun thing is that like count isn't really consistent between dungeons. Like in Shrine, everything has double as much count as everything else because the base unit of 1 count in Shrine is these like little tentacles that needed to only be worth 1, and so they had to kind of scale up all the numbers on everything else.
Most dungeons is 4 is the base unit. Mm-hmm. Shrine is 8. I think
9.
Toldegor,
different parts of the dungeon are different in terms of what the average is, but yeah, the emissaries are worth like 4 there, I think.
Yes,
or maybe 7.
Emissaries are 7. 7
yeah.
in Toldegor, and the average mob is 4. I think that's the only exception. Where
but the last half of Toldegor, all the mobs at the end of Toldegor are worth like 9. All the mobs at the start are worth 4, so it's weird. I think they just split the difference.
Officer stuff, yeah, they're all worth 7 or 9 or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. But it would be nice if there were a little, like if they just kind of scaled everything up to be consistent. So just scaled everything to like Shrine numbers, so that the emissaries and everything would be consistent between the dungeons. But that's a minor quibble about the count system. Anyways, let's talk a little bit more about creating a route for your group, because I think that what kind of the way we wanted to talk about this was more, what does the 5 classes that you have to play and any other factors. I think mostly the main factor for designing your route is what classes you have in your group. I said group almost because that rhymes with route. Okay, so yeah, you have 5 different classes in your group, and you have the affixes active that week, right? And those are the main factors that leads to what you want to pull in the dungeon. Most dungeons, there's kind of a default, like, here are the packs you usually pull. But there's actually a lot of flexibility, right? A lot of groups will pull dungeons differently, especially dungeons like Underrot, right? There's a lot of groups that will, like, there's, like, the patrolling 2 lashers, the 3 lashers over on the side that stand still. You can do a bunch of different stuff after Kragmaw. You can go left, you can go right. And there are a lot of groups that came up with different answers for what to do there. Trell, what kind of makes you choose between different options for your route? Do you just have a preference for you personally that you would kind of always do, or do you change stuff based on the affixes and the classes you're playing with?
Well, so my groups almost always have at least one rogue, so I always plan on at least having a rogue so you can skip every 6 minutes reliably with Shroud if it's that kind of dungeon. The second thing is whether we have two rogues or not, and that's something we're going to talk about, where if you have one rogue versus two rogues, you can skip quite a lot more packs back to back. Shroud has a 6 minute cooldown, and they don't share a cooldown as of now. Who knows if they'll change that, but so two rogues can be a major advantage in something like King's Rest, which is really linear, and you want to skip maybe one pack, do a pack, and then skip another pack right after that. And then the second thing is you have to consider like how much damage people can do in a short amount of time, and whether the tank and healer can live. So if you want to pull two packs at once, you need to make sure that like everything's going to die in that window of time before the tank blows up.
I would say like fire mages in your group is kind of a good way to change your route in this thing. Like there might be a void that you could either skip, but it would be costly, or you could pull, but it would be hard. And if you have a fire mage in your group, you'd be more interested in doing that kind of pull because fire mages have combustion and can just blow stuff up every 2 minutes. And you kind of also like balanced druids and Legion were kind of like this, right? Where you would want to pull really big every 3 minutes for Incarn, and then you would pull small, big, small, big, right?
Nah, balanced druid cooldown and Legion were fucking trash.
Oh, okay. Maybe this is season one.
Infinite damage all the time.
BFA season one, then is what I'm thinking about.
Oh,
yeah.
Lively Spirit.
Yeah.
With the Lively Spirit innervate trait, and then that was
you'd pull every 3 minutes, right? In a big way, and then you'd pull small between there. So thinking about your class's kind of DPS profile, and if your classes are cooldown dependent, designing your route based on which classes you have, and kind of trying to have the hard pulls, have them have their cooldowns ready for, is a nice strategy as well. Another thing you have to think about is kicks, right? Right, Trell? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's like the third thing I think about. Like, is this survivable? And then do we have enough kicks? Well, I guess that's the same thing as survivable. If you have enough kicks for this pull, you can survive. Even some bosses have a kick requirement, like the second boss of Shrine. If you don't have enough kicks, I don't think you can even do that boss on a high level key. Everyone just gets killed by the second wave of casts in a row, I think, at a high enough level.
Yeah, so to do that, you need to have, like, only one ranged, really, right? Or I guess you can have two ranged if they're on a 24-second kick, and you can still get all of them, but then you have no room for error. And if one of your range is a balanced druid, then you are going to miss casts, too. So that's definitely something to think about just when you're designing your comp. But yeah, the more kicks you have, or like if you have something like a solar beam, you could try to pull a bunch of stuff and kill it in the solar beam. Use that as a big, cooldown.
Yeah, so solar beam and trees are specifically good for like random things like Salt Blast and Toldagor, or like the attendants in Shrine that are casting that Sea Blast or whatever they're casting, and like the Hex Priests in KR. Like solar beam and trees are good for that because you lock them down for 20 seconds and basically you don't have to kick them at all. Whereas there are some kicks that are just like completely mandatory, like Lashers have like the decaying mindcast, like balance is terrible for shit like that.
So balance is good for covering the like damage casts that happen every 2 seconds. Balance can handle a lot of those, but balance can handle very, very few of the Mending Rapids or Unstable Hex type casts. Although actually Unstable Hex, if it's on them, they can take it without kicking it because they're in Moonkin form. So that's
I mean, that's just like that's just the truth of like range DPS in general. That's not even just Moonkin specific stuff. Is that for casts that only go on your tank and only cost tank damage, most of the time they can be line of sighted, so you can normally do something about that. And then like the secondary thing is most of the time tanks are just like really fucking tanky right now with their essences, so they're able to absorb just a fuck ton of damage. I know Brewmaster Monk is literally so tanky. Something's going on in the background. Brewmaster Monk is so fucking tanky right now that like they can take so many casts, even just like straight to the face, and be okay.
Yeah,
that's true.
Definitely. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what to do if you don't have a rogue in your group, because this is something that happens like, I don't know, all of us play with rogues for the most part in our groups because rogues are so good, but there are a lot of groups out there that don't play with rogues, right? Rogue is just one of the 12 classes, and like it's pretty easy to come up with 5 people that aren't a rogue. And still, Tettles is going to investigate whatever his sound is. Oh, I hope he doesn't get murdered. Oh no. Boy. Okay. Well, I guess Trell, do you have any experience or tips for what to do if you don't have a rogue in your group, or do you just like recommend getting a rogue? Obviously, we recommend getting a rogue in your group, but if you choose not to play with one, what are some ways to help out?
Well, honestly, you can still do a lot of the same skips and routes without a rogue, as long as you have another stealth class that can res, aka a druid. Either a bear or a wrestle druid or a boomkin can do the same thing that a rogue can, just a little less efficient, where you have to res, stop, wait, eat, and then pull. With shrouding, you just go straight through and pull the next pack.
Yeah, and there are some shrouds that I would replace with not shrouding if you don't have a rogue, like because the shroud is so much less costly in terms of time than doing a full skip, so it might be better to just pull what's in front of you. If you don't have a rogue as well, I would say instead of doing like 3 small skips, you should do 1 big skip, right? Just skip like a long time all at once without the rogue, and then you're like, because each skip is so costly without a rogue that you should try and do all your skipping pretty much at one point in the dungeon.
It's true. And I think in some cases you can just kill the pack, like you said. It depends on how dangerous it is or how worth the skip is. Like obviously that 21 Underdog group was 4 DPS without a rogue, and they still timed it. They just probably had to kill the mask in front of the first boss in Underdog.
Yeah, that mask is not even like that mask is not a hard pull to really do. Hey, Tettles, welcome back.
Thank you. Somebody was asking. Yeah, somebody was asking if they could park in my driveway. I was like, "What? No."
Oh.
Okay.
I don't
know. Okay, let's talk about some of the other considerations here when you're making your route. Like one thing to think about is how high is the key, right, Trell? In a really high key, you kind of have to. Not only are the pulls more lethal, but the main thing is you actually have to pull things on top of each other to beat the timer, right? Because otherwise, you're not gonna like if you're trying to do the dungeon in 20 pulls and it takes you 2 minutes to do each pull at a really high key, then you're not gonna be able to do the dungeon in time, right? That's 40 minutes right there.
Right.
So you need to find ways to combine some of those pulls and do them all at once, right? Whereas in a lower key, you could just kind of look at, like if you're doing an 18 in one of these places, you could just find the hardest pulls and do them literally by themselves, and you're totally safe, right? So you're fine on the timer.
Yeah, that's true. And the rule of thumb for high keys is less pulls, the better. If you can cut out 1 pull in the whole dungeon, you usually save yourself about a minute. And same thing with MDI keys, actually any level keys. If you can just cut out 1 total pull from the run, that's always a win-win. It'll be harder. Other pulls are usually made harder by doing that. Usually 2 to 3 are a little harder, but it is almost always worth it.
It kind of depends on like mob density too, because there's some dungeons where you can just add like 1 extra pack to each pack as opposed to doing like 1 full extra pull. Like think about something like Freehold, where like you killed the 2 brine scales and then you chain it into the corner pack, and then you kill some of those mobs and kill half of that pack, and then you chain it into the pack to the right. Like it's just chaining until like the important mobs of the pull are dead, and then you just keep going on and on is most of what you see. But it also depends on like mob density, because like if the packs are close together, it's way easier to consolidate pulls as opposed to if you have to run like some super long way, something like Shrine of the Storm.
Yeah.
Or into bosses as well, not even just packs after the important thing.
Exactly.
If the important council boss dies, like Eudora and Freehold or Gale Caller Faye, I think in Shrine, is that her name? You can pull in trash like right after the dangerous boss dies with the other boss that doesn't do anything but hit the tank. And that's usually a very efficient way to go, and you want to do that as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Or you can have your balance druid killing off the tentacles while you're fighting Lord Stormsong. They just run back and drop a starfall over there.
I'm still TBD on that. You actually lose so much. Like
maybe
if you have a prot warrior. Maybe if you have a prot warrior, it's probably fine.
Yeah, it's just it's something that Tettles did in a run I did with him, and it was interesting.
Lose a lot of single target damage, so I'm still TBD on that.
So we're kind of talking about the strategy of like preemptively planning your route, but one thing that a lot of groups do in practice is they just kind of YOLO through a dungeon, and then they kind of keep doing the same thing. I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of some tools to help you if that's your strategy. After you do each dungeon that you've YOLO'd through and just like pulled packs based on what you kind of feel like doing, you should take a look at what you did. Like open up MDT at that time and mark down what you pulled, and then see like, okay, how much count was this pull worth, right? And you can kind of look at it and you can be like, okay, we spent 1 minute on all these pulls, but one of these pulls was a Void Emissary by itself. Like, what can we do so that we don't have to do that pull again? Because that was really, really inefficient. This happens in places like Underrot. Sometimes there's like skippable voids that you could have just, you could change your route to be skipping that instead. So that's what I would recommend you do. If you're not the kind of thinker that likes to pre-plan before doing the dungeons, is I would take a look, like just figure out what your route is by doing it in practice, and then change it from there by looking at it and thinking about these sorts of things after the fact. That totally works too. You don't have to always do stuff before playing the game.
Yeah, I think actually YOLOing can be really good at the start of the week because you get the feel of how every pack is and how much damage they do to you and what people can handle. And then after that, like Dino said, editing it and figuring out what you can drop is always the right way to go. I almost drop like 2 minutes off my runs after the first time I do it for the week.
Yeah, totally. Like I've been in the same spot as well, where I just feel myself doing a pull, and I'm like, okay, this is bad. You know, we're gonna not do this one next time. We'll do something else instead. A much better way of doing it. I think there's definitely something to be said as well for like just trying pulls a lot, like trying different pulls. If you're just somebody who has pulled a dungeon the same way every time, you're going to be you're going to be a lot less flexible, and you're going to have a lot less like adaptability. I don't know. I think it's nice to kind of go into the dungeon and just like, let's try pulling these mobs this time. Let's, you know, if you just kind of get this feeling where, okay, your rogue calls that they have a 5 buff, like just try adding the pack that you're next to and see what happens, right? See what happens if you pull that onto the pack that you're currently fighting. Those strategies can be useful until you know that it doesn't work. It's fun and useful to try just combining pulls, and you might just discover that you can actually do that, and you're not going to get punished. And figuring those out is a great way to save a lot of time on the dungeon.
Yeah, the 5-0 thing's funny because it can end very badly if that happens, and you're like, pull more, and you instantly pull more, and then everyone dies.
Yeah,
but it can work out, and it is good to experiment. Like I think every few months, everyone should just try pulling motherload mobs in the third area, just seeing if they change. You know, like maybe they're actually killable now.
Yeah, every couple months somebody tells me that it's the strat now is to pull the research and development department of Motherload, and it's never been true so far, but maybe one day.
Not the strat, absolutely not.
I said that as a joke, but actually the fourth area of Motherload.
I like the fourth. Yeah, the war machines.
The war machines with the bombs that spawn count are pretty.
Yeah, you just farm the war machine, dude. The strat is you okay. No Girls Allowed was ahead of their time, right? You stealth to the third boss, okay? And then you just keep a war machine for the rest of the dungeon, and it's just actually a count factory. It just shoots out a mine every couple seconds, and you just get a count from it, right?
Hold on, how much count do you pull like 400 of these war
machines? It's like, okay, like have you guys ever played StarCraft, right? What's the first thing you do? You get the mineral production going,
workers.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have pulled a war machine. Is you actually have a worker there who's just mining count for you every time it shoots out one of the mines. So,
I wonder actually if you could outrange like 4 war machines and just kite while they spawn bombs, and you just actually farm count.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try that.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds fun.
It's the strat. Somebody's gonna win MDI with this strat, and Tettles is gonna have to make a public apology for flaming No Girls Allowed for doing that in that run.
I hate you all. What do you guys think about Bloodlust and Mythic Plus? I'm still of the opinion that Bloodlust is not that sick of a cooldown in general. You should use it to like enable pulls, like through healing, like through
it's like healing cooldown.
Yeah, okay. Bloodlust is a single target damage cooldown and a healing cooldown. It's not a good AoE damage cooldown. Most classes don't scale all that well their AoE damage with haste. It's good for a lot of classes, but it's not. It's often classes' worst AoE stat is haste, and it's usually good for a lot of classes on single target, but it's not as good in AoE. So yeah,
I agree with that.
I would bloodlust bosses, mini bosses, and then pulls that you need it to survive because of the healing throughput. Because haste on healers lets them save people a lot, and also like making a pull 10 seconds shorter is also a really good way to survive it too.
Yeah, haste on tanks too, also pretty sick.
Yeah, depending on the tank, like protection paladins with haste is with bloodlust actually completely unkillable.
Yeah, warrior benefits quite a bit from it too.
Blood Death Knight too.
Yeah,
should be unkillable. I don't really know, but they should.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're on the same page though. Yeah, tyrannical weeks, just lusting bosses, and then fortified week, like lust the hardest boss and otherwise use it on trash is kind of a good heuristic. Just kind of get it on cooldown as well. I don't know. There are a lot of dungeons where you have an opportunity to get 3-4 lusts, and you should try and get that many if at all possible. But on the other hand, if you need to like do fewer lusts so that you get good lusts, like Temple is a good example where often it kind of works out that you only get you have to lust like first boss, third boss, and there's not often 20 full minutes between those two bosses, especially in keys slightly below where you're going to use the whole timer.
there's this weird strat now that people are pulling that that archer pack bottom left, like right. Okay, so they're not doing the first pull, they're shrouding. They're doing that bottom left pack with bloodlust, like right on pull, and then just like literally smashing it on CD.
Yeah,
but that requires you to pretty much get your full timer.
Yeah, that's a strategy designed around using all 36 minutes, which is good, right? Like, the one thing to think about when optimizing your strategy is you should optimize your strategy on live keys for the full timer, because if you're faster than the full timer, you don't need an optimized strategy.
So a major dilemma for Seth Rallis in general is that, like, if you're making good time in a push like situation, you're pulling Galv at somewhere in the range of like 21 to 22 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you are going to get close to the full 36 minutes. You're probably going to finish the dungeon like 34 if you pull Galv at like 21.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. That's something we should have mentioned about creating routes. That's an important thing, is you want to make sure you set your most important bloodlust in the route first, and then plan your other lusts 10 minutes before or 10 minutes after that one. Like in King's Rest, obviously you want to bloodlust the Shadow of Zul on Fortified. So you got to plan to have 3 lusts total before that, spread out 10 minutes each. So like the first pull of the dungeon's probably bloodlust, and then you just hit it on CD 2 more times, and then the 4th one lines up perfectly on Zul, hopefully.
Yeah, that's definitely the strategy to go with, is you start with the least flexible bloodlust and you slot in the rest. There's some dungeons where there's a lot of flexibility for this as well, like Ataldazar. Ataldazar, if you want to lust bosses, you could just lust Razan as the first thing you do, and if you want to lust trash, you can just go left and lust there, which is a nice way to handle that, right?
Yeah.
You should always try and get your lust on cooldown as fast as possible too. Like in Ataldazar, if you're going to lust Razan, you should pull Razan first, and if you're going to lust the left pack, you should pull it first. There's no reason to go the other way, generally.
That one's complicated. Atal is so open that you can really lust Razan either way. You can lust him second if you lust the first pull on the left as well. So you go pull the first pull, you lust, and you come back around, do some trash, go kill Volcall, come back around, do more trash, and then drop down to Razan, and that's usually 10 minutes in, and you can lust that for the second one. But I mean, either way, you want to plan your lust around that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's easier for open concept dungeons. It's harder for KR and Seth Rallis, where you're like, hey, I really want bloodlust in like X and Y point, so I guess I use it just to use it here, because it's better than not using it in general.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's just kind of another point in favor of the open concept dungeons. I prefer them by so much, because there's so much more art to designing a route in like an open dungeon versus a linear one. And you can actually plan out bloodlust in a different place, whereas kind of King's Rest is the same every week. There's a couple of innovations you can make in the route designing there. Like, do you want to pull the 4 constructs at the start and lust that? Yes, you do. It's good. That's the strat. Trust.
If you
if you can't pull them into other packs, yes.
Yeah, that's another option as well. Is you can just you can sneak past him and then keep pulling the constructs in the easy packs. That's another great strat. Mm-hmm. Into the gauntlet rune even. Yeah,
the open dungeons are super fun though, because the creativity aspect of planning routes is something I really enjoy, and coming up with something interesting and cool that also saves time is a good feeling. So like, take a random Demolisher in Freehold or Crusher. Can't remember which is which. Crusher, I think, in Freehold, and you pull it all the way across the bridge to the Ravager, and then just instantly dies to the Ravager. I mean, you can do that because it's such an open dungeon, and you can leave it there for the whole key and come back and grab it. But like somewhere in King's Rest, there's no way you could pull a construct to the last boss. That would take a literal year for the construct to walk there.
Yeah, I mean, you could do last boss and then zone to the... Like, there are options in King's Rest. There are places where creative people have saved time. Like, just the idea of pulling the constructs onto other trash, for instance. Like, it was a good idea.
Getting pulled into the gauntlet room because you have that RP time where, like, your healer can run off and go and grab those constructs while the rest of the group is, like, starting up the RP on the gauntlet and everything else. Like, that's a unique strategy for KR, but...
I think that, yeah, and there are some dungeons like Freehold and Atal that are like there's so much optionality there, but like, again, I always come back to the Underrot as like the perfect dungeon. It's perfect with all the affixes, and there's a perfect amount of openness and linearness to it. Like, there are a couple choke points, and then there's a lot of spots where it kind of opens up and you can pull whatever you want or skip everything, and then choke point again. I love the Underrot. I think it's a great it's so great and it's so fun to make routes for Underrot 2. There's just so many different options.
Yeah.
You could pull 5 corruptors at the end of the dungeon if you wanted and pull them onto a bunch of worms, or you could skip all of those. You could pull 2 corruptors right at the end and skip all the other ones, and all the count is like you could make an argument for pulling most of the packs in the dungeon. Although there are a couple that are bad, especially on Teeming Week. I'm just gonna
you do the Ticks and 3 Maggot pack. I love that pack.
Let me just show you guys a little area where I would not pull either of these packs this week. 4 Maggot, 7 Tick.
Yes. This pack just got an upgrade.
4 Maggot, 7 Tick. That's a fun one on Teeming Week. Or this other pack here.
Wasn't there tides in that?
Rot, Swarmer, Maggot. That's another fun pull. So I wouldn't recommend either of these, but pretty much every other pull. Oh, and I would never recommend the Matron Mask pull. So, which it's just so cruel that just randomly, like you're just gonna, if you just go down the wrong platform at the start of Underrot, you just have to fight this completely unfightable pack that you can't skip either. So that's messed up.
Imagining that pack, it's already so hard to get the kick on the mask when it has the single matron's haste buff on it. Imagining 2 haste buffs on that thing is actually insane. It would just be like, bam, everyone's...
That would be so fun.
Yeah. But outside of that, like, you can make an argument for pulling pretty much every other piece of trash in this place or skipping it, and you can do all that too. It's so great. What a fantastic dungeon. Except for the flying Bloodswarmers as well. Would also not pull those. I've seen those tab targeted and pulled a couple times.
I pulled those on purpose, like a...
You can pull one of them occasionally.
With Reaping.
Yeah.
Reaping wave?
Okay.
That's pretty good.
But I would not recommend pulling like all, but more than 1 or 2 of them. Most of these I would ignore, the Feral Bloodstormers. It's nice though that MDT lets you choose all of them if you wanted. So
you honestly should just pull them all.
I mean, is there a comp that could do that? No, right? 5 tank? Could 5 tank do that pull?
No.
Maybe?
No. It'd take a while, but yeah.
Like
maybe.
I don't know. If they'd have to be pretty high. Like if 5 paladins with wings or something. Oh yeah, quad unholy. You nuke them all. The problem is that's not even enough swarmers for like you would need all the skeletons in the rest of the dungeon for quad unholy to actually kill these quickly too. Okay. Anyways, I think that's the that's the topic that we've strayed a bit from our main topic there, which was creating routes.
How to build your route. Yep.
I think we covered most of the important things to think about though when you're doing it. And again, if you're somebody who likes to plan out routes before doing each dungeon, that's a great strategy too. I would advise you to try and be flexible and adjust things on the fly as they happen. And if you're somebody who likes to YOLO things, that's great. But I would advise you to plan some of it out and figure out what you did and build on that for your future runs instead of just YOLOing randomly every time and not making any progress in a sustained way. So I think a hybrid of those two kind of lifestyles is your best bet.
Absolutely. Being able to recover when something goes wrong is really good. Like just knowing what count mobs are worth. Like say Tettles tab targets and pulls 3 monkeys in Siege. You instantly know what you can skip because he did that. Would save a minute off the timer.
All of a sudden there's just
experience.
4 monkeys at once, 1 friendly, 3 enemy.
Why do you have to use me as an example here? This has never happened. I don't know what you're.
He can't even finish the sentence.
Yes.
It's just good to have like a backup plan in all situations. It just helps so much in Mythic Plus, and it makes it so you don't waste your run and deplete it for one little mistake, because that's like 30 minutes of your life that you could avoid wasting. And also, it also makes it so you have to build the key back up and waste another 30 minutes doing like a 19 to get a 20 back, for example. So just having backup plans is important.
Yeah, the kind of like when one little thing goes wrong, having it not cost the key is a skill that you build up by doing hard pulls all the time, right? Like there's a lot of groups I've seen where like one bad kick gets missed, right? Like a Shadow Bolt volley from one of the mobs that cast Shadow Bolt volley. Any of them you're supposed to kick. Anytime you see the word Shadow Bolt volley, that's something you're supposed to kick. And one of those goes off. It's not a wipe. The group's at 40%, and then everybody's brains kind of shut off, and they miss the rest of the kicks too. That is a really good thing to try and fix, and putting yourself in these situations where you're doing really hard pulls and having everybody, stay doing their job even when somebody else messes up one thing. Like, you can survive a little bit of mess ups in most pulls. People have health potions. Health potions are like, they heal your full health bar. So
But people don't think on their own. It's like the same psychological concept that people will always walk through the open door as opposed to opening the other door. Like people literally are. It's like people are comfortable like knowing that something is going correct, and if they have to think on their own, then they just kind of shut down.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of just like a coolness under fire. Like you can do like 18 keys and not really be under fire ever, and be under much pressure, and then you kind of fall apart when you are. So I think it's important to make sure that people in your group have, have experience being threatened and having a stressful pull and doing a bunch of jobs at once. So yeah, would absolutely recommend doing that. Okay, let's move on to our final two topics here, which are it's kind of one topic, so we'll sort of do it together. The East MDI Cup. Tettles, you had the joy of casting this live, whereas I had the joy of being asleep for half of it. So what happened in this most recent East Cup, Tettles?
Well, I guess the short of it is that it was a very big fiesta. There was two teams. One was Old and Scuffed, and the other one was King of Ruins. And they had two. Okay, so these are 3 time trial maps as a point of reference. So these teams should be practiced for this. They were not. So it started off strong with a 25-minute Ataldazar. Not the fastest. As a point of reference, the fastest Atal that I think we've seen this season is like 14 minutes, but I'll take a 25-minute AD, I guess.
Yeah, our time trial, my team's time trial Ataldazar was very bad, and it was faster than 25 minutes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and then we changed that into a 43-minute Siege of Borealis. That dungeon's 36 minutes. And then we changed that into a 53-minute King's Rest, where a team had to death run fucking Shadow of Zul. They pulled him back to the checkpoint and were spam respawning to kill him.
That match has some other memorable moments in it. There was a moment where a tank pre-potted Skystep.
Oh, this is a good clip.
They pre-potted Skystep.
God damn it.
They ran into the pole. Then they jumped off the bridge. That was the sequence of events. They pre-potted Skystep.
Let me find this.
Yeah, pre-potted Skystep, ran into the pole, stopped, thinked for a minute, and then jumped off the bridge. It was really like a wonderful. It was a wonderful thing to watch. It was it was exciting. It was fun. But yeah.
In all fairness, I don't think they expected to make it to those maps, either team.
So they weren't practiced on those? Yeah.
Position. And so they did their best. I'm assuming they were probably having a little fun too, but they certainly didn't intend to chain wipe to Zul.
I mean, all 10 people in that match must have been sure they were going to lose that map, and then 5 of them just won, despite thinking that.
Yeah. I can just imagine the comms going on like, they wiped again. Oh no, we wiped again. They just wiped again. Okay, run back. It was 3rd chance. We wiped again. They just wiped the 4th time. Okay, let's pull it back to the checkpoint and just keep going.
Yeah. So that, I mean,
there's the clip. Drat in chat.
Where is it? Put it in Twitch chat. I can't open Discord while we're streaming because I'm full screened. Okay. All right. Do you guys want to watch this on stream?
That's him flying off the edge. That was fantastic.
All right, here we go.
Sky Step potion and running. Also important to note, since we were curious about it, that 97.
Oh no!
Like, what was he doing, dude?
Sky Step, run in. Also important. Backpedal.
Tom's had to have been okay. Pulling in 3, 2. No, we're skipping this pack. We're skipping. Okay, I'm jumping off.
Oh no!
Like I think. Okay, so the Resto Druid and their Fury Warrior both got Deadeye shot off the ledge. So I think that the Resto Druid and the Fury Warrior had to not be able to make it back to the group. So the Warrior needed, I guess the rest of the group maybe needed to die. Like, I don't even understand like what the thought process is behind dying to that.
Sometimes you press buttons and it looks really stupid, and the answer was just like, okay, but we were just kind of on a different page. We miscommunicated, right? Like, I've once in an MDI time trials key canceled all the hots on myself when I was targeted by 3 feral bloodswarmers.
How?
Well, okay, I'm glad you asked, Tettles. On live, my Shift-E keybind is an engineering belt. But on Tournament Realm, you can't have engineering belts, so my Shift-E keybind was free. So in a Taldazar, that's where I put my macro to cancel all my hots so that I could do a blind skip without getting the healer any threat. Then, in Underrot, I was fixated by 3 Feral Bloodswarmers and I panicked, and I hit my Engineering Shield. But my Engineering Shield was rebounded to this cancel all hots macro.
So,
I see.
I actually did the
Tell
same
me
thing.
more. What happened after that one, Dratnos?
Well, my healer, Billy Azuna, the mage main, but he was healing for us in this, was very disappointed and he just put Cenarian Ward on me. He had literally every Resto Druid hot on me, and I just canceled them all and died.
I did the same thing in practice with Shadow Meld. I have it on the same hotkey as my Arcane Torrent on live.
Right, that makes sense.
I went to Torrent, this big pack full of buffs, and I'm a Night Elf, and I press Shadow Meld, and then everyone in my group died because I lost them.
So,
rest in peace to Stara.
So when you see something like somebody sky stepping and then doing something weird, like it's possible that their sky step bind is just different on Tournament Realm than what they do on live, right? So yeah,
it could definitely be something like that.
There's certainly like those kind of things just happen. If you have any team under scrutiny for a full hour, like they did in this King's Rest, like there's bound to be some pretty big mistakes that just get made and look really stupid. But we all make those every single key, right? That's the joy of this game, is there's always mistakes that you can improve on.
Well, let's talk about the biggest mistake of them all.
Shadow of Zul. Yes, so Shadow of Zul was the kind of the big final boss of this dungeon. It was a fortified Quaking Necrotic week, or not week, but Keystone, which is really mean. Fortified Quaking in general is like the hardest Shadow of Zul week you'll have, but Necrotic on top of it. Like Shadow of Zul does melee also, and stacking Necrotic on the tank, even a couple stacks. You really need 100% of your healing to be effective on that mob to handle it on Fortified Quaking. So 18 Fortified Quaking Shadow of Zul Necrotic is a really hard boss, like a really hard mini boss. There's nothing easy about that. You need to, like, even an MDI key of 18, that's a hard thing to fight, right, Trell?
Definitely. And even in our MDI matches, we had planned to lust the last boss, and I think it was Fortified KR. We actually popped lust on Zul because I was about to die, and like that was the last ditch effort. We just decided to pull everything there and go a little bit slower on the last boss, so we did. It was worth it because we killed it. But the preparation for Zul is really important. I mean, he's the hardest mob in the dungeon. You got to have all offensive and defensive cooldowns ready for it. So at the end of the third boss, typically is the last thing you fight before Zul. You need to make sure you don't use too much on that last guy.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you have lust if possible. I'll go on, Dranos.
In an MDI setting, you kind of can't do like a small pull before Zul, but in live key, you can often do like 2 Berserkers to regenerate cooldowns before Zul. And that's a good strategy too if you're low on cooldowns before fighting it. But yeah, that's all I had. Go on.
Yeah, so you line up every single cooldown in the game for Zul because he does so much damage. And then the rest of the preparation comes in. I think we have a graphic for this.
Yes,
where
all right.
Before you engage Zul, you need to have people in certain spots. Like the healer needs to be kind of down the bridge, marked with the orange there, so that the tank, when they need to kite, they're still going to be in range of the healer. So the tank needs to go all the way to that red line initially with like a leap or a transcendence or any other movement. Like if you have a disc priest healer that can grip you out, that'd be pretty sick. You need to get out as fast as you can. Usually this is around when Zul is like 30-40% after you use your chain of defensives from your healer and yourself. And lust is over and you're just about to die. So you get out. And then you have to kite with that distance where the red line is from Zul. And you kind of have to dip in and out of his max range. So he starts casting on you and then you just like scoot forward a little bit. So he can't quite get the cast off. And then you do the same thing. You stutter step over and over and over again. And that's the way to do it once you kite. But before that,
you need to make sure that you start kiting as well when you still have some defensive on you. You don't want to just start kiting at 10% health with no defensives left and your healer not having anything big left. You're going to die to the dot, right? The dot is the main source of damage from Shadow Barrage. Like the initial damage instances aren't that big. The main thing is you just have this huge dot on you.
I see that a lot where tanks are like panicking at the very end. And instead of kiting whenever they had like their spell reflect available or some other defensive, they panic once they're like 10% health and then leap out of range of the healer and then get instantly killed. Where it's like, wait, now we're wiping. Now we're actually dead.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the dot does a ton of damage. That's why the healer positioning is super important. You have to heal the tank for a good 8 seconds, no matter what. As soon as they start casting, because that dot will continue until Zul hasn't hit you for a full 8 seconds. So before that, when you start the pull, you want to do a very clean rotation of externals. And in the East match, I saw one of the Pro Warriors just not using Spell Reflect, and that was just like a big no-no.
Yeah, that was my tilter.
Yeah, Spell Reflect is awesome against this because it's just a 20% DR for 5 seconds, right? Against all the damage incoming.
And you can use it a good 3 or maybe even 4 times on Zul before he dies.
So you want to start with your cooldowns that you'll be able to get back up, right? So things like Spell Reflect that will come back up later should be like your first button hit.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to get the maximum number of defensives cast during the fight as you can. And this is kind of like how to prepare for a raid boss. Like Zul is pretty much a raid boss for the tank. So on Brewmaster, I go in, I have my Transcendence set out so I can kite just in case. I'll go in and I call for Bark or Sack or whatever the healer has for me first to get theirs on cooldown. And that's like a 45-second cooldown most of the time. Unless it's Cocoon. They have a 2-minute CD for their tank, which is kind of dumb.
Cocoon is nice, though, because that will absorb a full third of a Shadow Barrage.
Yeah.
What about Link?
Yeah, I think you want to save that for later, right?
Yeah, that's the big at the end CD maybe before you kite, I think. But I'd start with the healer CD if possible, and then rotate your own CDs. So like on Monk, I would use Dampen after Bark is over, and then after Dampen, I'd pop Fort for a little bit, and then if it's starting to look scary during Fort, I'll roll out and Zen Med for a good 5 seconds or so, and just take a drink of water, hands off the keyboard, think about what I'm doing. And then I'll transcend out and start kiting if need be. But that's the
Brewmaster
optimal
way, right?
Yeah, that's just an example of one
Prop
tank
Warrior,
class.
it's like Spell Reflect on the charge with Avatar, and then like you go into Demo Shout, and then Last Stand, and then Shield Wall and Spell Reflect, and then you start running away. That kind of stuff, like.
On Pro Warrior, actually, it's important to not use Shield Block. You need all your Rage for Ignore. And even I do that by habit sometimes. I'll press Shield Block on Zul, and I'm like, why do I still do that?
Is there any merit in taking Never Surrender in the dungeon, like period, or like maybe
you need bolster?
If you're running a Warlock, do you zone out, take Never Surrender, then get resummoned back, or?
You could, yeah. If you have time to do that, that would be the play for Warrior Warlock combo for sure. I still don't. I'm not a believer in Never Surrender for the whole instant, unless you can really get away with it in the first boss room. Those mobs hit really hard.
Yeah.
And the gauntlet
because bolster is pretty fucking.
I would rather just kite 5 seconds earlier than play Never Surrender for the whole dungeon.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you kite in a controlled fashion, you can kite without running too far, and you like it can be pretty safe. So it's not the end of the world to just be kiting pretty early on this thing if you kite it in that controlled way of stutter stepping and making sure you're not ranging your healer. But every tank has a different set of options for this thing, right? Some tanks have a pretty easy time with it. Prop Paladin and Vengeance Demon Hunter often don't even need to kite, even on Fortified on this thing. Like Protection Paladin has Bubble, Spell Warding. Spell Warding, you can go Spell Warding Taunt, and then you can cancel Spell Warding when the mob's about to target somebody else. Or if you have a rogue who's second on threat, you could Spell Warding and they can cloak. And that's a really great combo to run there. So if
you're feeling like really advanced, you can even have a rogue open on Zul, so he casts on them and they just cloak the first hit or first 2 hits, and then you still aggro like shortly after that.
Yeah,
stuff like that can be really. But back to the kiting thing. The kiting is doubly important. You have to be just out of Zul's range for 2 reasons. One, he will stop and not hit you if you're just barely out of his 40-yard range, I think it is.
Yeah.
And 2, you can't be too far because he will target the next threat target and blast them instead, even if you have full threat. It's just one of those.
If you run more than like 60 yards away, he'll just turn and start killing other people randomly sometimes.
And the third thing is on like really, really high keys. Once you round that corner on the bridge that we have marked at the end on the right there, Zul will cast through the wall at you. And so you have to be 40-yard range like the entire time you're rounding the corner down to the third boss area, which can be tough. So you probably will get hit.
Yeah. As we know from the Pythagorean theorem, right, that hypotenuse there of that triangle, you have to run farther than you'd expect to keep the hypotenuse at 40 yards, right? When you turn the corner, basically you speed up for a little while until Zul is on the bridge running at you in a straight line again.
Is that the 5-head strat?
That it's true. Yeah, no, that is.
You have to do that. Yeah, it takes some practice.
I'm memeing a little bit, but unironically, that's what you're supposed to do.
I know you're memeing a little bit, but that's also true.
Yeah.
Okay. What other topics do we have on Zool? Oh, we have a clip here. I'm not going to play it on stream, but I'll link it and tell everybody about it. But it's
You don't want to play this? I think I want to watch this.
okay. We can watch this, but basically, there's a Vengeance Demon Hunter who did 100 and here. Let me open it up here. 113k HPS. It's kind of hard to see on our stream, but if you watch it in the clip, the Vengeance Demon Hunter here is basically just full healing themselves, and this is a 23 fortified Shadow Zool. It's a very depleted keystone, so they've had difficulties in the rest of the dungeon, but Shadow Zool is not one of them. Shadow Zool, they're just like this Vengeance Demon Hunter is totally surviving against.
Yeah, and so do you think Vengeance and Prop Pally are the best tanks for Shadow Zool?
I think Vengeance is, yeah. I think Prop Pally is pretty good too.
Seems like in this clip, Vengeance is super strong.
Vengeance
I'm
just
really
looks
surprised.
absurd, yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked like seeing it at first. I was like, what the fuck is this?
I mean, Prot can also like fully survive it without needing to kite, which is awesome too. And Prot also gives your healer a lot of times to do DPS when in their bubble and stuff too. So and their wings. So they're probably both A tier Shadow Zool tanks. Yeah. This particular Vengeance Demon Hunter is like obviously has got it completely nailed down and knows exactly what they're doing against it.
Yeah, he's playing the Gluttony build. That's important to note. Not Spirit Bomb. Gluttony,
It's true, yeah.
Gluttony gives you a lot of Metamorphosis uptime, and he's getting insane procs there and just healing the crap out of himself. You can actually see the healer not even having to heal that much, which is insane to me. I don't know, 23 Fortified Soul. I mean, the healer needs to spam the tank and almost the entire time, unless you're a Vengeance Demon Hunter, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, the Vengeance build that you see in high keys generally is a pretty low damage one, right? It's the Gluttony build instead of the Shadow Bomb build or Spirit Bomb build, which
Right.
so it does mean that like they're very tanky though. I think they might be one of the tankiest tanks when they're running that build pretty consistently. So
I think so.
you do need to pull bigger
downside
though
is-
to make up
yeah, they
for
just
how
don't-
tanky they
don't
are
deal
or how low
damage
damage they
hardly at
do.
all.
I wonder if that's the best 4 DPS tank. Maybe like Sigil of Silence, Sigil of Chains, a lot of self healing. Maybe that's the best one
Maybe that's the move.
Maybe.
because they're
They
so
can't really heal themselves.
yeah.
Well, locally, if you have trees up, I guess you could top yourself between.
I think they can top
active
themselves pretty effectively. Yeah, like obviously
Yeah, sure.
Brewmaster and Paladin has the self healing like Vivify and Flash of Light cast that they can do while trees are out, and Vengeance doesn't have those. But Vengeance does quite a lot of self healing just by hitting stuff.
Mhm.
I think it might be something worth trying out. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, let me find a Vengeance Demon Hunter real quick. Hold on.
Okay. I mean, Evade. We'll make him play Vengeance.
Phone up Evade. Yeah.
Let's move on to our question and answer segment here. So we have some. Do we have any from chat that we've accumulated so far? If not, feel free to type any questions you have on any topics in chat. We also have some from Discord too, where we collect questions every week. I guess I'll start us off here with the first one from Jason in Discord. Do you think the ability to practice keystones without reward would benefit M+, or is having one shot better for keeping it fresh? He doesn't mean infinite chances to time it like the old depleted system. Practice keystones without reward. Yeah,
I'm
it's
not a fan personally.
I think that the current system is good. Like, it's good that it matters that when you get your keystone, whether or not you succeed at it. I think that's a good thing. I think that a practice mode of some kind, I don't know. Yeah, maybe if there was some kind of like way you could war games keys or something. Maybe, especially if it was like
I don't know.
I think it's better this way though. Yeah.
I just in general think that there shouldn't be like a dungeon on the key itself. So you should be able to like chain run a dungeon just over and over again if you would like. Like if you want you just have a level in the dungeon. And so like if you want to run and do a 23 Toldagor, and then like you also have like you have like a 23 keystone in your bag, and you also have a 24 keystone in your bag. You put that 23 keystone in like the key fob, you do that 23 Toldagor, and you're like, all right, it's time to go do this 24 Toldagor. I don't think there should be like a dungeon specifically on it.
I think then though you'd see people like spend almost all their time in the same couple dungeons, right? Like, who would go to Motherlode except on the 1 week where Motherlode is playable? Who would go to King's Rest, right? You would just actually just do like you'd push 25 Toldagor, or you'd push 25
Sure.
Freehold or Underrot.
Sure. I mean, that's also because the dungeons are imbalanced in a way that they shouldn't be. Raider IO system is not conducive to that kind of scoring. There's a lot of just like major issues with that kind of thing, but you're right in that regard.
I think that like the current system is the best for the, because like I think that things actually would get old pretty quick if the more freedom we had to do whatever key we wanted at a time, and the more we could, it just didn't matter how well we did on any given run, the kind of less I think it would matter every time we played. Like if it kind of if you could just do a 23 key over and over again until you get it right, you kind of have that on MDI like practice runs, right? And that's I don't think that would be a good thing to bring over to live as well.
Yeah, I think that'd be a little too specific dungeon-wise, because Blizzard wants to avoid everyone just running Freehold every week once, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just never touch any of the dungeons.
Sure, okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
In Season 1, there was a mechanic where if you deleted your keys, you would get a random key, and you could re-roll all 5 keys at once, and I loved that. I think that's like the perfect solution.
Yeah, deleting keys was nice. That felt really good. Some kind of system like that where you get like a limited amount of more than one new keystones per run, like I don't know, even if you just, at the end of a run, you just, like, you saw 3 different keystones yours could turn into and you picked one. Something as little as that, I think, would go a long way to having more flexibility here. Because then
I don't think that would affect the people only running 1 key a week, because they'd have to run the key to delete their key. So it would only help the Mythic Plus community that likes to run keys over and over, and it wouldn't hurt
I think that's
the Raider community.
Yeah, I think the deleting keys system, like you did basically never run the worst like 2 dungeons that were around. And I think that's kind of okay. Like the dungeons should be more balanced than they are right now, and it's an okay patch for the worst couple if you never play them. I think what you do want to avoid is people only doing like 1 or 2 dungeons. And with deleting keys, you still did most of the dungeons. Okay, Necris on Discord asked, what's one thing you'd love to see done differently with M+ in the next expansion? One thing. Okay, so your top 1 priority for a different thing with M+. Mine, I think, is a reward system that is like compelling enough to get people to play it more. So something more than just like doing every 15 in time giving you a cosmetic effect, like some kind of leaderboard supported by Blizzard with weekly rewards of some kind, or titles, transmog, like the full set of rewards. Yeah, challenge mode-esque ones. That would be my biggest thing to add to M+ if I could only add one thing. Tell us how about you. What would you add to M+?
An affix rework, a full affix rework.
Okay.
Like I would change most of them, if not all of them.
Yeah, and I think that could be an episode we do, is we could just talk about all the affixes and how we would change them. At some point. I think that would be a fun episode to do.
Like I would literally just like delete one of the rows and add like a kiss curse. Like if it, in my ideal world, either the seasonal affix would be a positive affix, or one of the rows would be kiss curse. And I'm not like sold either way. Like you can do either one. I don't really care. But
yeah,
the way that the current system is,
I'm sorry,
not huge. I'm just not huge on the current system.
Going off that, I think I would just delete a row, like Tettles said. I would just delete Tyrannical and Fortified. Like we already have so many affixes changing drastically every. Having 1 less, like we did in Legion, I think would be a good thing, and I think everyone would agree it'd be easiest on both sides if Tyrannical and Fortified just went away, or they were matched together in some way. Where
well, I would delete those too. Like with a full affix rework, I don't believe that those should stay either. And kiss curse affixes, for those who don't know, like think about explosive. If you kill an explosive orb, you get 5% damage. If you let it go off, it does damage to you. That would be like the most basic.
Yeah, so kiss curse means that there's a benefit and a drawback, right? Like there's you can do something that'll help you, and either that comes with some extra work, or it also does something bad to you.
Or quaking, like if you don't stack on top of another player, then you get a shield. Whereas if you do stack on another player, you get damage taken.
Yeah, just make
like, it doesn't have to
like void quaking
damage. Yeah, but like it doesn't have to be damage taken. It doesn't have to be like a damage gain. It could be like a movement speed increase. Like if you kill a mob, you get like a 60% movement speed increase. That would be fucking sick for your tank kiting or something like ridiculous. Like
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Something.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, it's a hard work to design balanced kiss curse affixes, but clearly it's just hard work to design balanced affixes in general, so that we shouldn't let that stop us from trying to make the fun ones.
So if they're not huge on the kiss curse system, then the seasonal affix could also just be strictly positive.
Yeah, I would be fine with that too. Like, I don't know, reaping. Reaping was just so great, and that wasn't even strictly positive, but it was just so fun. And it was basically neutral, right? It didn't hurt the dungeon timer very much at all. That was just so great.
That
yeah.
would be my one thing, is just like a complete affix rework, because like the current affixes just do not work in keys sometimes. Like, bro, quaking on Overseer Corgus is a fucking trap, because you get a double and you just like instantly die to the quake. And you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, there's just no counterplay. Yeah.
We had an issue yesterday, I think, in Total War. We had a bad overlap of spell queuing where he did the crossfire, the dead shot, and quaking happen at the same time. Like, all three hit at the same time. And we were just like, oh my, we survived, but it was a very dangerous moment.
All right. Alva asks, as a 440 Brewmaster monk, I'm slowly starting to enjoy M+ more with my guild, in contrast to previous months of not enjoying it. As a newbie, I'm actually pushing keys from 11 or 12 upwards, when I only go in looking to do them for completion. My question is, as someone who has the gear and the class understanding, is there a place of conglomerated knowledge in which I can read up on some smaller nuances of completing M+ efficiently? Info on Reddit is too spread and specific per post, IMO, and places like Wowhead are too vague.
This is from our Discord.
Yeah, this is a good question.
I think the Wowhead sources may have been like the general class guides he's referring to. Some Wowhead guides are in great depth.
Flawless's Outlaw Rogue guide is like the gold standard here. If you're an Outlaw Rogue and you're looking for like what can Outlaw Rogues do in dungeons, read just the entire Flawless Outlaw Wowhead guide.
Point of reference, that's the only Advanced Mythic Plus guide that is still around. I think all of the rest of them have gotten removed. So that's the only Advanced Mythic Plus guide. Most classes have one or two people who do high keys and stream it, though. So there is some resources that you can get from streaming and from Twitch. You can always go into their chat and ask them questions, too. Most of the time, people are pretty friendly and would take time to answer your questions.
Yeah, I don't think there really is a good resource, though, of like just all that knowledge in one place in like easily readable, digestible form. Just because there's so much knowledge to be had about Mythic Plus. It's really hard to like Flawless's Outlaw Rogue guide on Wowhead. Let me go find that and link it in chat, because it's so good.
That's a very well written guide, but in general, there's so much nuance to Mythic Plus, and there's so much that always changes in terms of like pathing, like meta pathing, meta comps, like where you're shrouding, like there's like a bunch of stuff that changes like even weekly, that you wouldn't know unless you're just like completely in tune with what's happening at all times. And a written guide is good because it like lays everything out nice and neat, and like there's like ideal situations, but it doesn't get updated quick enough, IMO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because things change like week to week. We just kind of, the meta changes in high keys, and we like learn new things and all kinds of stuff, and we have a new strategy for like, the hibernating the blood swarmer trick comes in and out of fashion depending on what the week is and what the group comp is and who you're playing with and stuff, and you just kind of have this like toolbox that you're always building into, but like there are so many different tools in that toolbox that writing them all down it would just be so much.
Definitely finding a player that's doing it live and asking them their opinion, like a really skilled, experienced player, is the best way to do it, like a streamer. There are all kinds of guys out there, like Drynos is saying, that get outdated quickly. Like Jason had a really very, very good guy for Brewmaster and Legion, and then I had one for Season 1, which is already outdated.
Yeah, I was reading that because I was doing some Brewmaster, like I'm doing some Brewmaster tanking in the near future probably, and I was like, oh, let me go read Trell's guide, and I was just like, okay, this is how I'm supposed to deal with Infested. All right, okay,
It just changes so fast. Like even week to week, I'll recommend certain things over others. All of a sudden, be like, well, this new eye level and scaling, I think this is actually a little bit better. Or the strats change drastically on the meta, which DPS are good based on buffs or nerfs.
All right.
All kinds of stuff.
Nethrezim1 in chat asks, how would you feel about random affixes each time you upgrade or deplete your key, as opposed to a weekly affix rotation? People ask me this all the time, actually. I think it would be awful. I think that, like, going into your key each week, you know at the start of the week when you do a new key, and you're like, okay, I gotta relearn these affixes, and you just like wipe to Quaking 3 times or whatever because it's a new affix. Imagine if that was just every single keystone where like the whole key you're just learning the new affixes of it. I think that having the affixes be the same for the week is really important, and
Or I panic Typhoon because I think it's Sanguine still, or I'm
Yeah.
trying to bolster kill
Yeah.
on a non-bolstering week.
It's one of those ideas that sounds nice because it would increase, the difference and keep things feeling fresh, but it's not. It would not be good. That would be like just having been on the tournament realm and done those like back-to-back keys the same day where you have different affixes. Like that's really jarring. It's really hard to do. All right, Tyr in chat, who is one of the I think that's Felinator, the prop paladin.
Alliance.
One of the top.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
At Tettles,
Sick.
at Dratnos, at Trelsky, added all of us. Wow, for huge visibility. That's the strat, by the way. If anybody's trying to get your question answered, at all of us. That's the strat. Should Prop Pally get a small buff? Maybe take their heal off the GCD. Perhaps Vengeance should also get Spirit Bomb baseline and other abilities tuned down as well. I think that Prop Pally and Vengeance are actually both in a pretty good place right now. I don't know. I think Vengeance could use a little bit of a damage buff. I feel like you have to play the Gluttony build to be reasonably tanky and high key. So yeah, maybe something like Spirit Bomb baseline seems fair. I don't actually think that Prop Pally needs to have their heal off the GCD to be good though. Like I think that Prop Pally is like, I don't know, that would kind of open up some
He
builds.
does a good job with it on GCD already, but I think it should definitely be off GCD because of the consistency across tanks. Like Brewmasters, self-healing, and Expel Harm's on GCD, but their main source of mitigation is all off GCD. Paladin's main source of mitigation is their Light of the Protector. Like I think it should be off GCD.
I'd argue that like that's not even like a buff. That's like a quality of life change that would just be almost purely for benefit. Like sure, it would be a buff in terms of like your actual throughput that you could actually give, but it's similar to Ignore Pain in the sense of sure, you have to give up some opportunity cost for it. However, it should probably just be baseline because it feels like that it is on GCD.
Yeah, they would maybe need to rebalance a little bit because like there's a talent build you can play on Paladin where you could like Light of the Protector every couple seconds, and that's balanced by the fact that it's on the GCD, so you don't really have time to do that. But exactly. So if they found a way to balance around that and take it off the GCD as well, I definitely would be fine with that. Yeah.
Okay, so as weird as it sounds, I feel like all tanks are in a pretty good spot, especially for Mythic Plus in the current state, except for Blood Death Knight. I feel like Blood Death Knight is in a really shit spot. I'm also okay with them being in a bad spot because they're so fucking impossible to balance. Like I love Blood Death Knight and I fucking love Gorfien's Grasp. I legitimately love that goddamn ability so much, but they are literally impossible to balance because Blizzard does not understand how to balance like some shit like a Bone Storm and self-healing to a tank class and make it not impossibly overtuned. It is asinine that they can't.
Yeah, they shredded their armor.
Just revert all the nerfs except for the Bone Storm nerf, I think. And I think Blood Death Knight would be fine. Yeah.
I think so too. It'd probably be about balance right now, honestly.
Yeah. Jason in chat has a pretty good idea here. Just give them a 45-second cooldown, 15% leech aura that lasts 15 seconds.
Yeah, bring that shit back up. Dude, all right, give me the biggest Magoot pull in Waycrest Manor in the history of time. I will fucking give myself that fat leech from that Death Knight, and we will go ham.
What's funny about that is there's kind of a replacement ability in the game now, but it's on a different class, and it's on a healer called Mistweaver Way the Crane. And it's pretty much like group leech. Like the bigger the pull, the more everyone heals for 15 seconds, and that's how a lot of those MDI pulls were possible with the double unholy DKs blowing everything up.
Yeah,
it's pretty insane.
There's also like Vampiric Embrace and Ancestral Guidance and stuff that you can play on a couple other specs that sort of do that, but I think Way of the Crane is definitely the best example of it right now. Very strong. Okay, any other questions you guys have seen in chat that you want to pull out, address? No?
I think we're good.
Last call. All right. That'll be it then for us this week here. It's been a great show. We're glad to be back live here, and we're planning to continue to be live for the next couple weeks until such time as we need to do stuff on Saturday again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when that next one will be, but the current plan is that next week we'll be live again on Saturday, and then of course we come out on YouTube on Sunday and on the audio feeds Monday morning. So that's been us. We've been the Titanforge podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. Bye.
Thanks all.